Hi there everybody, I'm Clery from FourFourTwo here, and this week, wonderful news, football's back. A major international tournament that England go into as one of, if not the team to beat. That does not happen enough in this life. But two facts for you that will form the basis of this video. Fact the first, the England team that won the Women's European Championships would be going into this World Cup as probably the big favourites. Fact the second, the England team that won the Women's European Championships are not going into this World Cup. Not really. So the question then becomes, can they still win the thing? And the answer to that one is, oh god, yes. And here's why. Okay, so we'll start last summer. England won their first ever European Championships. It was great. You remember, Chloe Kelly got that goal in added time. They beat the Germans at Wembley. What's not to like? And this is the team that started that game. In fact, that's also the team that started the semi-final. And it's the team that started the quarter-final. It's the team that started every single group game because Sarina Wiegman, she named the same 11 for every single match in that tournament. Partially a case of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's more like, if you've got this brilliant system and some of the best players in the world are really good at playing it, don't just start messing with it for no reason. And that's exactly what it was. It was a really effective system that was beautifully played by some of the best players in the world. And it had not just great individual quality in it, but a beautiful balance. You had Mary Earps in goal, who if she wasn't then is probably now considered the best goalkeeper in the world. At centre-back, you had this great combination of Leah Williamson and Millie Bright. If you heard the cat-dog thing about centre-backs, I might do a video on that at some point. They were a cat-dog pairing, and that Bright is like so good at defensive fundamentals. She's dominant in the air, she's great in the tackle, she reads danger really well. And Williamson, brilliant on the ball, great defensively, also brilliant on the ball. She gets involved in the build-up, she carries it into midfield, she runs, she drives. It's a perfect pairing. Anyway, ahead of those two in the double pivot, you've got Keira Walsh and Georgia Stanway, who are again perfectly balanced in that Walsh likes to get into deeper areas, likes to get involved in the build-up, is one of the best passers in the women's game. Look at this, my god, that is brilliant. And Stanway can also play as a number 10, so she likes to drive forward into the attacking line, giving you that nice little movement combination thing. Combinations. And then up top you had Lauren Hemp, who's really good at driving with the ball, carrying it, going past players. We'll talk about that in a second. Fran Kirby, who's equally as comfortable playing with the centre forward or dropping the former midfield three with her pals here. Ellen White up front, who wasn't like a great goal scorer. She got a bit of criticism for that, but the job she plays in the system was really important. And then you've got Beth Mead, who is considered by a lot of people to be the best women's player in the world, one player of the tournament, and I think came second for the Ballon d'Or. So, a lot of fun there. And what Wiegman had them doing for like the first 60 minutes of most games, which we'll get to, is carrying the ball forward as much as possible. Trying not to play long, trying not to hit long passes, but getting on the ball, whatever that is, and carrying it. Pressing the opposition as far back into their half, into their third as you can. Hence the selection of most of these players, because in Williamson you had a centre-back who could carry the ball into the midfield. In Lucy Bronze you had someone who was once considered, I think, like the best women's player in the world. She's great at moving up the pitch. You've got Rachel Daly at left-back, who primarily a centre-forward, which again we'll talk about. She was really comfortable carrying it. Stanway and Walsh both equally comfortable doing that. Kirby would move it forward. Hemp would go past players and beat them. And in Beth Mead, once you've got Bronze coming up that side of the pitch, she would then float into the central areas where it's nice and congested to allow her to do this. And then when they did have these teams penned into their own half, into their own third, into their own box, they would end up with this sort of attacking 6 players. And pretty much every single team at the European Championship found that incredibly difficult to live with. But this is only really the first 60 minutes of England games, because what Sarina Wiegman does is she has a starting 11 and she has a finishing 11, and they're different in terms of personnel and they're very different in terms of their approach. Because while the object here is to pen teams back into their half, to force them to chase the game, to really drain them mentally, to drain them physically, to use the skill you've got in tight areas to break them down, what they did after the hour mark was try and exploit space. And if I just wave my magic wand and reset this, Wiegman kept making the exact same 3 substitutions. She would take White off to be replaced by Alessia Russo, Fran Kirby would come off to be replaced by Ella Toone, and then either Mead or Hemp, usually Mead Meadley, she'd be replaced by Chloe Kelly. And when they made this change, they would actually start weirdly being less aggressive. They wouldn't look to drive the ball up the pitch with the ball as much. They would actually sit a little further off. Now, Russo's a fantastic centre forward and scored loads of important goals, but she's also really good at moving into space and pulling defenders around, which is something that White doesn't really do. And with the opposition feeling a little bit more confident, they're getting on the ball more, they're trying to push out, she would then just drop into pockets of space, hoping to take a defender with her. And now, instead of Mead, who wants to play centrally, you've got these 3 good players, all really direct, all really good at running, who will move into whatever area of space is left. Like, Ella Toon's the best way to explain this. Like, her and Fran Kirby are both really good at the number 10, but where Kirby prefers to drop slightly deeper and play with the midfield, Toon actually wants to play up front. She will go from that position into the forward line, and that's how England got that goal against Germany. The game is a lot more open at this point and a lot more stretched, and you can see Russo here has pulled out all the way from the number 9 position into sort of like a quite deep right-hand side. That leaves a very nice space, which Ella Toon breaks from the number 10 position into. Fran Kirby gets on the ball, being one of the best passers in the women's game, as we've said, and she kills them with that pass. And again, because Toon is a far more natural finisher than someone like Fran Kirby is, she finishes that as if she's a centre forward. And that's pretty much just how you explain Wiegmann's system. You spend the first 2/3 of the game just compressing the opposition as tightly as you possibly can, then in the final third of the game, you open that up, and because you've worn them down physically and mentally for such a long period of time, you capitalise on the mistakes they're more liable to make. But this, you see, is where the problems start, because while Kelly, Toon and Russo all scored really important goals for England in those final sections of matches, that system only works if your starting 11 can do all the preliminary work, if it can do their job. And of England's starting 11, they are going into this tournament without the services of Rachel Daly at left back, without Leah Williamson and captain, without Fran Kirby, without Ellen White, and without Beth Mead. And to make matters worse, while they do have Millie Bright, and she will feature in this tournament, she hasn't kicked a ball in months. She's been injured for the final part of the season. And this is what Sarina Wiegmann's big decision for this tournament is, because while she's without a number of her stars, she has incredible depth off her bench that could pretty much plug every single one of these gaps. You haven't got Kirby because she's injured, but that's fine because you've got Ella Toon, and you haven't got White because she's retired, but that's fine because you've got Alessia Russo, and you haven't got Mead because she's injured, but that's fine because you've got Chloe Kelly. The 3 super subs you relied on can just come straight into the team, which sounds really obvious on the face of it, but in order to do that, you have to completely sacrifice your approach of having a starting 11 and a finishing 11, of having these 2 different systems. You have to get rid of the thing that won you the Euros. So that's the choice. Would you take a hit on the system to accommodate the players, or would you take a hit on the players to accommodate the system? And the thing is, it's a decision that only gets tougher once you start delving into your other options. Because it seems obvious that Russo should be the one to replace White, but you've also got Rachel Daly, who is not like Ellen White, but is more like Ellen White than Alessia Russo is, and also was the WSL's top scorer this season. And then if you don't have Russo, then that kind of negates one of the main benefits of having Ella Toon, which is the club chemistry the pair of them have from playing together at Man United. So maybe you want to play Lauren James there, who again is not like Fran Kirby, but is more like Fran Kirby than Toon is. She gets on the ball, she carries it. And I mean, you can see it, can't you? Why the temptation is then not to replace your missing players with the best players, but to replace the missing players with the best players for the system. Because then you've still got Kelly and Russo and Toon to come off the bench in the last 30 minutes and do to teams at the World Cup what they did to teams at the Euros. It's a tough one. But hang on a second, Adam. I thought the whole point of this video was that England could still win the World Cup. All you're doing is going on about all the problems they've got and why things are terrible. And yes, that is correct, well observed, but the point I'm trying to make is that while England have a lot of problems going into this tournament, what they really have is loads and loads of excellent solutions. Because whatever solution Wiegmann decides for the front line, she's either going to keep the system that's really good or have loads of players that's really good. Players who are still levels and levels above the vast majority of other teams in this tournament. They haven't got Leah Williamson, no, but they have got Alex Greenwood, who's a tremendously experienced part of this England side. She can play at left back, she can play at left-sided centre-back. She'll fill in there relatively easily. The only real choice is whether you want Carter or Niamh Charles to play at left back. And both of them are dead good. And yes, okay, they are without one of, if not the best players in the world in the shape of Beth Mead, but Lauren James has just had one of the most impressive breakout seasons imaginable at Chelsea, and there's no reason she can't have a breakout tournament here in her place. The point I'm trying to make here is it's very easy to label England as being in the midst of several player crises, but they are one of the few teams in the world, probably the only team in the world, equipped to cope with multiple concurrent crises. And if that can't get you excited about an international football tournament, I don't know what will. I'll put it this way, the 2 players who scored the goals for England in the European Championship finals 12 months ago are still in this squad and aren't even guaranteed to start. That is the kind of depth we're talking about. But there is one other problem here, which I don't think anyone else is really talking about, and that is there are a number of mistakes starting to crop up in this team the more it's getting changed. But that's probably to be expected. You've got such a settled team, you've got such a settled system, you're having to make changes all the time without them being planned. Mistakes are going to creep in. So whatever it is Wiegman decides to do will make them more than capable of winning the World Cup. They just need minutes with it. They just need game time with it. And the group they've got, starting against Haiti and then having Denmark and China, is a really good difficulty curve to allow you to get some of the bumps out and just to get everything nice and gelled. So can England win the Women's World Cup? Yes, absolutely they can. There is not a single team in that tournament that will not be terrified of playing them. But will they win the World Cup? Maybe. I don't know. I hope so. I just think if you could have your first choice pairing in any area of the pitch going into a tournament, you would want it in central midfield, and Walsh and Stanway are probably the best central midfield in that tournament. So you've got that, you've got a chance. But yes, anyway, if you'd like to know more about England's Lionesses, you can catch them in the brand new 442, which is only going to be brand new for about 2 more days, because the new one drops the same time the tournament does. So rush out, leave now, exit the flat, go and buy it before it's too late. But yes, of course, in the meantime, get me on Twitter at Adam Clery, Clery, 442, everywhere you'd care to find it, at 442 as well. And I can't wait for this, because all the games are on while I'm at work. And I work in football, so it's not even skiving. Until then, though, I ideally hope you enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe if you did. It makes me dead happy, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Bye now. Goodbye.